Hello, creators. How are you guys? I am very excited to hang out with you again to talk about this topic of Facebook and YouTube and how these things influence what we're doing in reaching people and changing their lives. I have a friend of mine back with me again, Mr. Benji, which you will see him in a second. But we are going to be recording this as a podcast as well. So you guys have been around these live streams. You know the drill. We're going to talk for a little bit, kind of introduce the topic, and then we're going to get to your questions as we go through, talking about how these new stats are really impacting the landscape of social media platforms and how they're shifting and who's using what and what value they're getting from each one and how that impacts what we as creators do as we're trying to reach these people and impact them and change their lives with the content that we are creating. So we've got a lot to talk about here, and we're going to be taking your questions, talking about them after a few minutes of talking about the topic here. So if you guys leave your questions in the chat, and we have a new, Heidi's not with us today. Trina is. So Trina's in the chat, and she'll be taking your questions and putting them in the document for us. We'll get to them as much as we can. So good to see all you guys. Benji, Benji's in the chat. But he's also here on the call with me. Hey, Benji, how are you doing today?
What's up, guys? I am so excited. Thank you for having me on again. And this topic,
2 weeks
I'm telling
in a
you,
row, man.
Everybody needs to be listening to this topic because it's huge. It's so significant, literally for like the next 10 years.
Yeah, sweet. Well, we're going to jump into, hey, Story Greenlight, Big Media. I think I know that person, Sean. Good to see you guys. So we're gonna dive in here. Let me hit the record button for the podcast recording, and Trina will be taking your questions out of chat, and we'll be looking at those here and answering those here in a second. So hold on, let me hit record. All right. Well, hello, creators. How are you guys? It's great to hang out with you again for another Video Creators Podcast episode like we do every Tuesday here on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. We're excited to hang out with you here and talk about something that is huge. Huge. This is so big. It's so important. We're talking about the social media landscape, kind of big picture here, and talking about how things are shifting, what's changing, and what it means for us as creators. And we're going to talk about some practical implications of things you guys should be doing on your channels and what this means for you who are growing audiences, trying to reach people and impact their lives. You will find links in the show notes that go to a few different articles that talk about how Facebook is teenagers are abandoning Facebook. Facebook is declining. For a long time, it was like most popular, number one. Now things have switched a bit, and Facebook is now number 4. YouTube is growing as number 1. And as a lot of this shifts, I think there's some things that we need to kind of think about and know and do as creators. But before we dive into all that, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine who's here with us, Mr. Benji Man. Hey, Benji, how are you?
What's up, guys? I am excited, guys. This is a huge topic for you, like Tim said. If you guys are planning on utilizing YouTube for your business or whatever it is you do, or becoming a YouTuber, it's actually great news. Actually, news that's always kind of been significant, but just now are people noticing it and putting out articles. So Let's jump right into it.
Yeah, well, before we jump in, introduce yourself, though. Tell us what you do on YouTube, and because you've been on YouTube for a very long time, had a lot of success. So tell us about yourself a bit.
Absolutely. So I come from a channel called Video Influencers that I started with my co-founder, Sean Cannell. And we both started on YouTube super early. I mean, we're talking like 2008, 2009. He was more behind the lens. I was in front of the lens. But we've been utilizing this platform to do all kinds of things for our personal lives, for our businesses, for people that we work with. And we just saw how significant YouTube was. So in 2015, after literally years and years of building a lifestyle around YouTube, we decided to start Video Influencers. And now we teach everything we know. Literally, as much as we can pump out there, we're teaching it. And that's a little bit about us. Me personally, I still daily vlog with my wife, Judy of It's Judy's Life. And, you know, I'm so proud to call myself a YouTuber. And that's why this topic is big for me because not only is it very personal, but I really believe, and another reason why we started Video Influencers, that there's so much more opportunity. So excited to get right into it, Tim. And again, thank you, man.
Yeah, and so you guys can check his stuff out. There'll be links in the show notes of the podcast recording. You guys can go check that out and see what he's doing on YouTube. Let's walk through some of the stats here first. And there's a lot of different articles linked up about this. But let's talk about the stats, and I want to hear from you, Benji, about what you think the implications are of this for us as creators. So Facebook, the overall premise is they're losing ground among U.S. teenagers between ages 13 and 17 years old. And this is all according to Pew Research report that was released about a week ago at this point. Snapchat, Instagram, and YouTube are now more popular than Facebook. And Facebook, though, has like over 2 billion monthly active users worldwide. So for them to be number 4, that's pretty that's a lot of people we're talking about. So we're not saying it's like, oh, it's nothing these days. There's still a lot of people. But among the teenagers who took the survey, 85% said they use YouTube most actively, followed by 72% said they were for Instagram, 69% said they most actively use Snapchat, and 51%, so barely over half of these 13 to 17-year-olds were using Facebook. In fact, Facebook is only 10% of teenagers who took part of the survey said that they use Facebook more than any other social app. So very few teenagers are using it as their primary social media network. And so this is a pretty big significant change since the last time this poll was conducted, which was 2015. Facebook was still the most popular among teenagers there. They had 71% of the 13 to 17-year-old audience, which is more than any other social network back then. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter were the most popular social media apps. YouTube wasn't even in the top 4. And so, and just so you guys know, the survey was 743 U.S. teens between ages 13 and 17 years old, and it was conducted between March 7th and April 10th. And there's a lot of things that have changed since then that could influence this, such as the penetration of smartphones. That's really gone up since the last survey as well. And
internet connectivity.
Yeah, there's a lot
all over the world.
Things happening. But I find it interesting that YouTube wasn't even in the top 4 a few years ago, and now they're like not only number 1, but like exploding, like shooting forward as number 1, and the guy who was number 1 is now down to number 4. And now this is among teenagers, and we'll talk about other demographics here in this conversation as well. But social media consumption overall is just going up, which is another part. The Internet Trends Report said that the average time spent using social media has increased from 90 minutes in 2012 to 135 minutes in 2017 among teens. Now, among adults, it's also grown from 2.7 hours in 2008 to 5.9 hours in 2017. So it's the amount of time spent on social media among adults is growing much faster than the amount of time growing among teenagers, which is interesting as well. So, Benji, I just threw out a ton of information there about what's the kind of the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about this?
Yeah, and guess what? There's tons of articles like this, right? And depending on what demographics you're looking at, what type of content, and what is the context behind that research, right? Because it applies differently with different subcultures, different tribes of people, different passions. The one thing I will say, and the one thing that I think people forget so quickly, especially with YouTube and Google trying to launch things like Google+, the thing that YouTube is great at, including Google, is search, search, search. And why this is so important, it doesn't really it's not talked about in this research, but the one thing that made YouTube and Google so powerful is the thing that's continuing to make them powerful right now. How ironic, they tried to start a competitor to Facebook, Google+, that completely failed. I don't even know if that's something you can log into anymore. But the thing, their saving grace, is a thing that they thought was old and clunky and like just done. There's no competitors to search for video. That's the point I'm trying to make. With Facebook, they have their own competitor, Instagram, right? Snapchat is a huge competitor. That's why these teens, they have options and they're going to wherever it is they feel is the coolest, where are the influencers at. So that's number one. YouTube is a search engine that literally has no competitors at their level. Second thing, YouTube is just way more popular because of things like monetization, right? Two, it's very trendy. Even though it's not really trendy, it's trendy because every time someone gets big on another platform, right, like Viners on that app Vine, they ultimately became YouTubers, partly because of monetization, but also because of long-term branding, building a business. A lot of brands, it's kind of like how brands used to treat blogs. They used to be kind of a joke. And then after like a decade, 15, now 20 years, it's a legitimate way to put out content and reach people. Well, that's what YouTube's gaining right now, I believe, more than anybody, right? So on both fronts, both like consumers watching and consuming content, as well as brands and how they perceive YouTube, it's just the most solid way. So those two things kind of overshadows everything, all these little data points and everything, because again, YouTube is so powerful at search. But there's some other little nuances too when it comes to teens that has huge significance for the long term.
So do you think a lot of teens are coming to YouTube searching for content, and that's why it's growing, and that's kind of the difference between the two platforms?
Well, I think naturally they are using YouTube as a search engine, using Google as a search engine, which leads into YouTube search results. But I think for teenagers specifically, there's something about becoming a YouTuber. Like, for example, I think I mentioned it last week. When I go to speak to younger people, elementary, high school, I haven't done a lot of colleges lately, but when I ask them, what do you want to be? Almost every hand gets brought up and they say YouTuber. That is powerful because it's almost like it's something to look up to. It's like back in the day, I don't know how far back, but people love the idea of becoming a fireman or a policeman, right? Or there's like something that people kind of idolize. Well, right now it's being a YouTuber. It's crazy.
When I first started, it was like being a rock star, being a movie star.
Exactly.
You know, which are still things, right?
Right now, becoming a YouTuber is so desirable. And why that's significant is like Tim, you and I both know to become a full-time YouTuber in the sense of like a vlogger or the YouTuber like some of these comedians, it is very difficult, very competitive. But becoming a YouTuber in a smaller business model or just utilizing the platform for your business or passion or even your career and job, there's so many opportunities right now, and the writing's on the wall, you guys. YouTube is where you should be at least for your home base, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what would you say is kind of one of the things that are really attracting teenagers more to YouTube than to Facebook? I mean, because their consumption has gone up on social media in general, but Facebook itself is declining while YouTube has gone from not even being on the list to number one. What do you think is the main thing?
Well, it's so simple. It's that first thing that I mentioned. Number one, Facebook has competitors, which are options for teens. Okay, so that's number one.
Snapchat and
exactly right, and
Instagram,
like that's the
which
thing
is owned by Facebook, conveniently for them.
Yep, for sure, and that's going to be huge for them, but I don't think that's going to be enough for them. And it's kind of like what Facebook is doing with video right now is what Google tried to do with Google+. They're trying to compete in the video platform, which I hope that works for them. But I'll tell you, like literally, YouTube has a decade of experience. Google has almost 2 decades of like search experience. But I think the second thing is, again, YouTube has no other options, right? Like what, Vimeo? Like literally, that's the only thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I love Vimeo, but not for other purposes though. And
then this is the thing, man, we talk about how becoming a YouTuber is hard, or just like starting a channel and getting views. You want to start a Facebook page from scratch and try to get video views on that if nobody knows you. See, that's a problem. There's no good search function on other platforms. Now, I do believe things like Instagram, even Snapchat, you can upload your video, but again, the searchability is really bad. Well, you're kind of limited to hashtags.
The discoverability on Facebook is limited. Well, not limited. I shouldn't say that. For video revolves pretty heavily around sharing. So it's that share button, which is definitely user behavior that's built in more into the Facebook platform than into YouTube. Like on YouTube, they tried it. You can have contacts, but I haven't heard of anyone actually using that feature very much. But sharing on YouTube means like you're sharing it to Twitter, or you're sharing it to Reddit, or you're sharing it to Facebook, or to some other like Tumblr or whatever your platform is, or Pinterest. Whereas on Facebook, you can share a video with everyone who follows you, and so that becomes more like the discovery mechanism by making content that's shareable. But on YouTube, it's like, oh, I could discover things by searching, or for a lot of channels, especially entertainment-based channels, the discovery is actually through that suggested video column, which is arguably maybe even more powerful than sharing, because Google's just going to learn what you want to see and just start putting it in front of you, which I think is what Facebook Watch is trying to do. And maybe we'll do is making a platform where content is more discoverable based on them getting to know your viewing patterns and your viewing habits and interests, and just showing you the content that you want to watch when you get into a video mode.
One more thing I'll add about Facebook, right? There is this stigma. So we're talking about right now, all the rage is like what Facebook is doing with your data, right? And running ads or selling that data for other people to run ads and reach you and target you. There's another stigma about Facebook. Young people know that's where their parents are, right? Like kids, if Tim can speak to this, I'm starting to see it with my kids. But we all know, being teenagers, the last thing you want to do is hang out with your parents, right, on the weekend. You want to go out, well, back in the day when they had these, you wanted to go out to the malls, right, hang out with your buddies there, go out to the movies. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there were some kids, some teenagers that wanted to hang out with their parents. I think most kids were forced to hang out with their parents for family time, which is a great thing, right?
Oh, that's lame. I feel
But
bad
let
for
me
those
tell you,
families, but yeah.
But let's talk about Facebook. Facebook is where you know your parents are connected, right? And teenagers, they love their privacy. And things like Snapchat, where like it's hard to navigate for the older generation, it's like a perfect place. That's just one example. But there is a general stigma. And I'll tell you this, as Instagram gets older, it'll also have that stigma. But the thing about YouTube, there's not a stigma there. It's just cool because, number one, everybody in the whole world uses it. Partly because of the search, partly because there's no competitors. And third, when kids think about becoming a YouTuber, YouTube money, making a business, right? Working with sponsors, working with brands, getting free stuff. That is so huge because right now, generally speaking, there's no good competitors to YouTube other than, I think, like Twitch would be a great example. But again, Twitch is so specific. I know they're growing.
Facebook video, like all of these, like, oh, it's just gonna be the next competitor to YouTube. Like so far, like if Amazon comes out with some sort of user-generated content type of, like it'll be different, So it's not like a competitor. These are complementary platforms, if anything. But so, what does it mean? Do you feel like for a creator who, I want to talk about who is targeting teenagers and then one who's not targeting teenagers. But let's talk about the former first of all. For a creator who's like, my most ideal, and this is something you guys should all think about, by the way, if you're not as creators, you need to know who your most ideal subscriber is. Like, who's my target audience? Who is my channel for? Because if you don't know who it's for and have a clear idea of who that person is, that person, they won't feel that when they get to your channel. You got to make someone feel like, oh, this channel is for me. Like, yes, I need to watch video influencers. I need to watch Benji Man TV. I need to watch, because like I feel like he's talking exactly to me. So it's very important that you know who this is. So Benji, for creators who their target audience resides somewhere in that 13 to 17-year-old age bracket that's growing on YouTube, what do they need to consider? What do they need to be thinking about? What do they need to be changing or doing to really take advantage of that?
Well, reaching teens, it's the same strategy as reaching older generations, right? Seniors, or even reaching kids. Remember, all this is based off of search behavior. You just have to know how they get to the content they're watching, right? And I can't speak to this because I actually don't have any teenagers as kids. I don't really hang out with a lot.
Kids?
My kids are 5 years old and my twins are 4.
Okay.
So this is what I'd say.
I have kids older than you. Look at that.
Yeah. You guys should consider talking to teenagers, right? Like, do you know any nephews and nieces in your family that could literally tell you? I'm always asking young people, how do they find the content? When somebody says they follow me and they want a picture with me, I'm always asking them, how did you land on our channel, right? What is it? You got to learn what is the thing that happens when they sit down at a computer these days it's on a smartphone, right? And how are they actually getting to the videos? So that's number one. I think that's number one, but it's really number two to what Tim said, understanding what audience you want to reach, right? And then third, make sure you execute on that. So whatever hashtags they're using, whatever search terms they're looking for. Another little bonus tip, this is what I've actually seen. Of course, like when I'm out in public and I'm watching, like, just people watching, and I see people like on their phones, I'm like seeing what they're doing from a distance. One thing I see with a lot of young people, they're no longer even typing. Have you seen this, Tim? They're not typing their searches. They're using voice activated search. I'm still in the archaic ages of like typing every little word, getting like every letter right. They're all just, the voice is so powerful now. It's so good that they're doing this. So think about that. They're going to be even more specific in their searches, I believe. And they might have like very specific types of sayings that we don't know about that you need to find out about.
Well, we did a collaboration. This is about a few years ago now at this point, about 2 years ago, with a friend of ours, and they have a few million subscribers, and their family vlogs channel is totally on probably the 11 to 13-year-old teenage girl. And so we were in their videos with them, and they were on our channel. It was fun. And we have a ton of their audience came over to our family's channel. I have never seen so many emojis in the comments in my life. Like
Yeah.
these kids were having entire conversations with just emojis. And I'm like, I know they're saying something to each other, but I don't know what that means. I don't know. And I started
need to
feeling
find
like,
out. And you gotta find
the
out.
old guy. I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like I thought, what am I, 38 years old now? And, I try to stay on top of this stuff, but I've never had full conversations with just emojis. So like, that for me was, these are not my people. This is not, I do not understand these people. I don't know how to connect with them.
I used to work at a YMCA with teenagers, okay? So I feel like I have a different kind of understanding. I was a teenager and I quickly became an adult and then worked with teenagers in team programming. And one of the things I knew my boss back then, he's my mentor now, did really well. He always let the teens decide what was going to happen, what kind of events they were going to throw, what kind of parties they're going to have at the teen center. Why that's significant is like us as adults, we have no clue what is cool, right? Like we are literally, we have other things to prioritize.
Speak for yourself,
and
Benji. Here,
oh yeah, you're cool. You're cool. That's why I'm glad and honored to be on here. But me as an adult, I've been out of school for a long time. I'm, again, my priorities are my family, my kids. Well, with teenagers, you gotta let them tell you what is cool. And why that's significant, like Tim mentioned, we have no idea what these emojis are being used for. They might use the same emojis as us, but there's a different meaning to it. You got to find out what that is. So the way to find out how to reach teens in terms of the YouTube videos is talk to them and ask them and then observe and then execute based on what they tell you. I'll tell you this. The reason I even got on Instagram was there's a young man that's on our team right now. He's our production assistant. He's like, Benji, you need to get on Instagram. It's bigger than Facebook. This is like in 2012. I'm like, whatever. I'm a YouTuber. I know what I'm doing, right? He's like, no, trust me. Just sign up for it. I'm so glad I did because I was, I think, one of the earlier adopters, right? And it was because I let this teenager tell me what was cool. And it was the same thing with Snapchat, right? And it kind of leads us into the next topic, which is like people that aren't targeting teens. I have something huge to talk about, but I want to see if there's anything else you want to add.
No, that's good. Yeah. So it sounds like, just to kind of recap, is that if you're targeting teenagers and you're not a teenager, then you should definitely have some teenagers in your life. Mm-hmm. You should be talking to them, hearing from them, getting feedback from them, and anything else that you said? Learning how to read emojis was my tip.
Just understand, again, this kind of, segues to the next topic, how important it is to pay attention to the next generation. Don't discount what what they're doing because it's literally going to influence the next decade.
I feel like, and I'll say this parenthetically, then we'll kind of move on to people who aren't targeting teenagers. But I feel like the difference between Facebook and YouTube is that Facebook is really about like social connections and and it's not really about following brands as much as it is about following friends and people like you actually know or people you care about following for some reason. On YouTube, I feel like it's more about entertainment where like you can come to search for like how do I change a spark plug or those types of things. But for a lot of us, it's like you start there, but then you end up clicking on the one suggested video, then the next suggested video, and before long, you're watching Jimmy Fallon, has nothing to do with spark plugs, and you're just kind of like kicking back. And so it's more of like an entertainment type of value. And I don't want to draw any conclusions to say, well, kids these days are really about connecting with people anymore. They're just about trying to feel good themselves. I mean, I don't think that's the takeaway here. I think it's more about like, there seems to be in like what the next generation is looking for is different than what it was even when was the first survey done? 2013. So it's just like a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's important for us to stay on top of this stuff. What about people who aren't targeting teenagers and you're going after either kids or adults?
So this is what I would say. So kids is a whole nother ball game, you guys. That's like a whole nother can of worms, right?
Yeah.
Because again, there's so many protections against kids, and right now YouTube is focused on that. I just add that in there because again, like I know there's some channels out there that are targeting kids because you make kids content, right? Whole different strategy there. But literally, with everybody else, even if you're not targeting teens, think about this. How did Facebook become so big? It was something that older teens were using in college. Boom. I couldn't even get into it. I was like, in those years, I wasn't going to college and I couldn't get into it. I was like, I want into this thing called Facebook. Couldn't get in, right? So there was some exclusivity. Same thing with Instagram. It was a younger generation using it. Snapchat for sure. It was kind of an inappropriate platform for most people, like looking outside in, but kids loved it again because yeah, kids, when I say kids, teenagers loved it because they figured it out and they were communicating with it, right? Why this is so significant is because teens kind of tell you what's going to happen in the next 10 years. Everybody that are old vogies on Facebook, including me, well, we were once teenagers saying Facebook was cool, right? So whatever teens are using, this is why it's so crazy this is happening to YouTube, that YouTube is, again, a cool place, right? It's always been a great place, but it's, again, a cool place. I can tell you this, too. Studies and articles are great, but I literally went to YouTube about like 2 or 3 months ago, San Bruno, talked to a whole bunch of YouTube reps. We have a YouTube rep that like works with us sometimes with brand deals and just helps us with our channel. But we were sitting there, I was asking, hey, you guys, tell me, is YouTube really still doing okay? Like, are they still growing like they once were? They said, like never before. And they said it was because of this Generation Z, these teenagers, pre-teens. Their viewing behavior is so big. Why that's important is like if YouTube is a place they love going to and they want to become YouTubers, it's going to influence the next decade for YouTube and just social media in general. Second thing too, this is so significant, you guys. Why is it? It's not just that YouTube is cool. So one thing I'll say is like, I think YouTube is very like utility type of platform. You watch videos and it's good at putting that out there and archiving videos. This is huge, you guys. 10 years ago, definitely 20 years ago, what were teenagers doing after they got home from school? Tim, what were they doing? What were teenagers doing after they get home from school when we were growing up?
20 years ago?
Yeah, 20 years ago. At home. What do they do at home? What's
Nintendo?
the first thing they turn on?
Was it their like Nintendo?
Well, what were they
1?
watching? What were they watching?
Oh, like Beavis and Butthead and
TV.
Oh, TV.
Television. And man, let's pull up some studies there about what the average watch time for TV was 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. I bet you it's similar to what people are doing on social media. And I would argue now people be on there even more because with kids having their own smartphones, with adults, we can consume content, not necessarily in the living room where the TV was, but literally anywhere. I could be watering the garden, right? And I hear about this, a lot of people, they're doing something and they'll turn on a YouTube video. They might not even be watching, they're just listening to it, right? So that is huge because less people are watching TV. They're watching these other platforms like Netflix and Hulu, but also YouTube. And YouTube's beautifully integrated now into a lot of these platforms. I have a smart TV. I sound so weird saying that. I have a smart TV and I wave around my remote,
said that
right?
20 years ago, people were like, what? A smart TV?
You guys, that is so significant. The reason the teens are using this, right? The reason that YouTube is going to be huge is because a lot of attention was lost on TV and put onto YouTube and other platforms like that. If you understand that significance, you will dig in and invest into your YouTube channel more than ever.
Well, the hardware makes a difference too, because televisions were restricted to the living room. If you have a sister who wanted to watch something, then you couldn't. And VCRs, like to record something, this was kind of like cumbersome. And so like your time was kind of limited. But now, with the penetration of smartphones, everyone has their own device right in front of them. It's mobile. They can watch it sitting on the toilet, when they're in the bus, when they're at the gym, and so it's like their personal TV in their pocket now, and the consumption has become so much more accessible than it was like when we had a little tube TV in our living room, right? So that's making a big difference as well. Although I don't really understand why that would preclude Facebook from growth as well, because they're very highly mobile and people want to be connected to each other, but I guess just not the same way.
It's like there's certain things that throughout history happen repeatedly. Like before it was TV, it was movies, right? Before it was movies, it was radio. Can you imagine sitting around the living room watching radio? YouTube is the closest thing to that viewing behavior, right? To that, like that. Now it's individual. It used to be a very group thing, right? Even the TV. Facebook, like you said, the core of Facebook is connecting with people, but it's not necessarily viewing content. The viewing content is something that's been crammed in there by Facebook because like we need people watching video because of these watch times, right? These sessions people are having on things like YouTube. YouTube is so pure in the sense that it's just the modern day TV in my opinion, except with the enhanced ability to search. It's like getting right to the channel and show you want in time. And two, it's like individual, so you can watch on a smartphone, like you said, not share the channel like choice with other people.
And it's also personal though, because when you watch television, there's no what's the word, like expectation that you could reach those people or meet them or talk to them or interact or engage with them in any way. It's just a lean back passive viewing experience. But on YouTube, like there's comments and there's Twitter, and you can follow them on Instagram now and see what's happening in their personal life, or like you feel like the human connection is just so much deeper because of the social aspect of social media on YouTube, where I feel like that human connection goes pretty far as well in really helping kids want to connect with those people that they feel like are their real life friends, their best friends. That
Absolutely.
And when they meet them at places like VidCon or Playlist or CVX Live or wherever, they're like, the lines are like, oh, like they're crying and they're like, you have no idea the impact you made on my life. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's why we do this, is to reach people, to impact lives, because the potential to actually not just tell someone about something, but actually show them, invite them into the story, and make them feel like they're a part of it, and that it feels like a one-on-one connection, even though it's obviously not, but it feels that way. That's the potential impact that I think is really helping YouTube grow, but also allowing us as creators to reach more people and change their lives.
And I think the point is too, there isn't just one variable, right? There's so many variables. Yeah. And with the world of social media, there are just so many different platforms, so many different choices. It's just YouTube has the one thing. I'd say the one thing, again, just like I'm saying, like what I heard at YouTube from YouTube is going to be more accurate than like just what you read some randomly online, or the fact that YouTube is a video platform versus there's no competitors, is the fact that this is a thing. search, search, search.
Yeah.
People can find what they want. And on Facebook, unfortunately, they can still search for things, but because there isn't this behavior or this expectation like, oh, that's where I'm going to go to upload a video. Even people that aren't YouTubers, I met a guy, Tim, the other day at a meeting where I had to tell him he had a channel and he had his own videos on there. He didn't even realize that you could have a channel. He just uploaded videos to YouTube because he heard, like, when you're trying to reach people, just put it up there, right?
Right, yeah.
I had to tell him he had to put his contact number for his business on there, and I showed him his channel. I was like, I didn't even know I could have a channel. That's also a whole significant conversation
Light
because I'm telling you,
yeah.
there's a world out there that has no idea,
Yeah.
and once they get the clue,
yeah,
it's going to be huge.
We got some good questions coming in. Those of you guys who are listening to this, the recording of this, we're live streaming this actually at youtube.com/video creators. And we'd love to have you join us every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we got usually a few hundred creators hanging out here, talking, interacting in chat. And we've got some good questions coming in. I want to hit up with you here, Benji. First one is from Secret Crush on Glam. Should we as creators be active on all social media platforms, on maybe just the top 3 or just on YouTube? If our goal is to grow our channels, what advice do you have for that? How active should we be on all these other
So
platforms?
like what Tim said early, it's the basic principles first that you apply. Number one, you figure out who you want to reach, right? And once you figure that out, you figure out where they're at other than YouTube, okay? Now, this is specific to people that want to start a YouTube channel for whatever, YouTuber, for your business, or you're just trying to get something out there, okay? So YouTube should always be your number one. You're making sure content goes up there regularly, whatever that means for you. Outside of that, it's really up to you. I'd say this, work as many platforms as you realistically can, consistently engage with your audience. I think the moment when you start scaling back and really specifically figuring out which top 2 to 3 that you're going to focus on is when you can't keep up with the engagement, okay? So my wife and I, we literally have 1 million plus followers on multiple platforms, and we can't get back to every comment anymore and every reply. So just pick which ones are going to be the most ones that are going to have the biggest ROI, right? The biggest return. Like, I still love Twitter, right? This is what's crazy. We haven't talked about Twitter once. I still love Twitter for communication.
It's my favorite too.
For engagement, right? And I'll tell you, even a lot of young people still will have a Twitter. If they're on Snapchat, they still have a Twitter because when it comes to communicating, they're just nothing better. And everybody else sees your communication. Whole nother topic, whole nother can of worms there. But for me personally, for you, you just have to figure out what that is. Also, what do you have the most fun doing? Because ultimately, outside of YouTube, wherever you have the most fun creating content or engaging with people is where you're going to want to hang out the most and create the most engagement, the most depth. Me personally, right now, go to my Instagram, Benji Man TV. I love Insta stories. I'm literally utilizing like my daily vlog. I still vlog on a regular camera, but Insta stories is what I love to do. So no matter what anybody else tells me, I'm on Insta stories. There's another reason for it too. I'm seeing the analytics around that platform giving me the highest engagement, specifically with that tool. That's for me personally, right? Again, you utilize everything, you see what gets you the greatest engagement that you have the most fun doing, and just plant your flag and just go with it.
I just followed you on Instagram.
Woo!
Hashtag success right there. No, kidding. Yeah, the way I think about this, same thing, like where are you going to find the most traction? I used to be that guy who posted every video to Tumblr, to LinkedIn, to Facebook, to Twitter, to Pinterest, to like every platform. I can't remember Dig. I used to always submit to Dig back in the day. And then I'm like, you know what? The juice isn't worth the squeeze on all of these. Hey, that rhymes. All these platforms. And so now I don't share YouTube videos at all on Facebook. I just upload them natively because that works far better. And I don't really care if I don't get an extra 2 views on YouTube. I'd rather reach people where they're at and let them hopefully be impacted by the message of the content. So to answer your question, Secret Crush on Glam, whether you should be active on all social media platforms, I think it's up to you, the amount of time you have to give to it and what your goal is on the platform. I would personally not set a goal of like, I'm going to use Snapchat and try to get everyone to convert over to my YouTube channel. I don't think it really works that way. Or I'm going to be active on Pinterest. Maybe you're going after a big Pinterest audience or whatever, like cooking videos or something. Which now you can upload straight to Pinterest as well. But like that, it depends on what your goal is. But I would engage on the ones that you feel like make the most sense for your audience and your niche and what you're trying to accomplish. And interact natively on that platform, not just spamming like, hey, I have this new YouTube video, you should go check it out. So I think that's the way I would approach that. Peter Gregg, you guys are selling the teenager thing, but neither of you are aiming stuff for teens. Is this conversation going to change anything for either of you? What may you change? Please share. Well, go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You first.
I'm first. Okay, you guys. So this is the thing. One of the reasons why I was so excited to get on here with Tim and talk about this is because I've understood this for a very long time, that teenagers, even though they're on Snapchat, they ultimately want to become YouTubers, right? So it's not going to change anything for me today. And in fact, even when I heard that, it just reinforced what I was already doing. I've been a YouTuber live for 10 years now, right? Like literally not only is my life, but my business, so much is encapsulated into YouTube. However, what this conversation will do, articles like that came out that we have the link down below for, is just make me want to go even heavier onto YouTube. I always say, just like Tim says, you want to reach the people you want to reach and make sure that's a niche, like group of people, right? Or one type of audience. But once you grow, you want these other audiences that like it makes sense for them to watch your content to be watching you. That includes teenagers. So, my brand is split up in between what I do with my family and food and fitness, and then what I do for my business with video influencers, right? Both of those can apply for teenagers that are getting into cooking, want food. My food videos would be appropriate for them, right? For my business, any early business builders, right? People wanting to like become a business person one day, it would apply. And how it would change maybe is I might make a little more micro content because I know that they're into like little spurts of content rather than long form stuff. So I might maybe start another channel or, connect with them on other platforms in the way they consume content, like Snapchat. Like if I had a little bit more time, I would create more content native to Snapchat, knowing it's a heavy teen audience that would lead back to my content that I don't change on YouTube. I think you're muted. You're muted.
There we go. I was sneezing, so I think the difference for me is that, and I'll just be honest here. So we have a few different channels, video creators and schmovies being the primary ones, and we have like a rubber band rainbow loom tutorial channel that nobody knows about. We have a kid channel that nobody knows about. We have a few other of those that we just do just for AdSense, and we don't ever tell anyone what those channels are. And so I guess the rubber band rainbow loom channel is going after teenagers. And I don't think we're going to change anything. And it's like the young teens, like the 8 to 12-year-olds, basically. So maybe more like the tweens and the teens. But in terms of my family channel, like this is something that, I sometimes I wrestle with. It's tempting for me because on that channel, we're actually trying to go after young moms who feel overwhelmed and struggling with their kids. And we just want to tell stories that help moms feel like being a mother, being a parent is a noble, worthy goal. It's not like I gave up my career for this. Now I'm just doing dirty diapers, or I spent all that money on education and now I'm not even working, like whatever the case might be. It's just being a mom is tough. It's I'm not saying from experience. I just, I have a wife who has 7 little kids. Our oldest is 8 years old. So we're trying to go after the audience, but that audience has like seemingly very little time to watch YouTube, and the audience that we end up attracting tends to be the teenagers, which is fine. I'm glad that they're there watching, but of all the family vlogging channels that I know that are just exploding and taking off, it's because they have that high young teen female audience. And I feel like, okay, you know what? We have been grinding on this channel for a long time. Let's just blow it up and switch our strategy, and let's just tell stories that we know teenagers are going to engage with and really vibe with, and like they're going to be like coming back. Like, I know how to play that game, but I have to kind of give up like my mission for the channel in order to do that. So for me, the tension is, do I give up the mission and go and change the content to be like totally all in on the family stuff that blows up and goes like multi-million views and subscribers on YouTube pretty quickly? Or do I stay true to like, no, this is what my mission is, even though the audience is smaller and it's harder to get them, they're busy, they only get like 5 minutes a day when they're like, you know, in the bathroom, like with the door locked before the kid comes knocking on it, you know? So, and so far my wife and I have been like, you know what, our goal here is not to grow a big channel, and we're not going to shift it to teenagers because that's what's going to get views, although that's tempting sometimes. Instead, we're like, this is what our mission is, and we would rather accomplish this mission with a few people than just be big and popular and kind of lose that mission. So I'm just kind of being transparent there, guys. Like, I have to struggle. Yeah, everyone, like, you know, like, I feel like, I just want the views. I want to blow up. And other times, like, no. So I don't think you should, personally, we're not changing our mission for the sake of like, okay, this is where the views are. Let's go do that, which we could do. Now, on the flip side is I do think there's other things that we could do and should do and can do better that would better reach and serve moms, but we haven't had the capacity to do that off because we have 7 little kids ourselves, right? So, as far as video creators is concerned, Peter Greg, I don't think there's too much I'll be changing here in terms of like trying to reach a teen audience, because my goal here isn't, again, to try to reach that like a teenager as much as it is to be like, this is what I'm passionate about. This is how I want to serve people. And some of the people right now in the chat are teenagers. Many of you aren't, and that's fine with me. So let's we got a few super chats here and some sponsors asking some questions. Let's hit those up here, Benji. Kids Toys Play, good to see you, Darcy. Thank you for the $10 super chat. As far as search and discovery goes, does bringing viewers to YouTube from other outlets like Facebook, Instagram, Google+, does it increase channels' value to YouTube? And is one platform more beneficial than others?
Number one, bringing any traffic, generally speaking, is great. And YouTube loves that, right? I couldn't tell you specifically. I'm not that deep into our analytics or even like that deep into the analytic machine of YouTube to tell you like how much better that is than like just people like signing in generally. Okay. But I can tell you this for sure. YouTube does love it. Now, specific to Facebook, I can tell you like we have literally almost tripled the followers on Facebook that I do on YouTube. Now, think about that. I love YouTube way more than I love Facebook, yet I have a bigger audience on Facebook. And the reason I mentioned that is like we promote one of the reasons why we created the Facebook page is to reach the audience that was on that platform to promote the videos that are on YouTube. I have found that they throttled down any traffic outside of Facebook so much that like these days I'm like, why would I even do this? Because I look at the analytics on YouTube and it's just so sad, like the traffic that's from Facebook to YouTube. Now, it makes sense to me. People are going on Facebook to watch Facebook, right? So that's why Tim is starting to upload natively. That's why I've uploaded natively some strategic content. And I don't care about that taking away potential views. But like I said, the views that come, I'm not losing that much. But why that is significant and what you're talking about is this. You just want to bring traffic in. It doesn't matter where it's from, right? And your call to actions shouldn't necessarily be like from people on Facebook or any specific platform. It should just be reminding them, you know, what content is going up, when it's going to go up, and why they should come back or why they should subscribe. So that's all I can say for that. I know that YouTube, again, like Facebook, doesn't want to drive people out, but they're much more friendly to that just because they understand that if you want to be like friendly for the community in general, you're going to want that cross promotion. But what do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I agree with that. Starting viewing sessions on YouTube is valuable and it's important. I think that for most of us, like I try to look like if I put 20% more work into this, will I get 80% more results, right? So it's not like I feel like the amount of work that would go into trying to convert traffic from Facebook and Instagram and Google Plus and Tumblr and Pinterest and LinkedIn and whatever, try to convert all that over to YouTube, like the amount of benefit that brings your channel overall for the amount of energy it takes, I feel like is, I would rather put my time and energy into making another piece of content for YouTube that can do more to potentially reach the people who are already on YouTube. Because there's already billions of people here that I'm not tapping into. So I could use these other platforms and bring people here, but the sliver I've already reached on YouTube is so small. It's a small sliver of the pie that I would rather, like, let's make content that could potentially rank better in search, or that could perform better as suggested content to my target audience, or that would tease a better story. Or what if I put more time into figuring out like how to better craft this title and this thumbnail or this hook or production that would make my content more valuable on YouTube? That's kind of where I think about this a little bit more than trying to bring people over. Now, I do post my videos. Like I said, I upload them to Facebook and I tweet them and things, but it's not really an active part of like my strategy. Like, this is what's going to make or break my channel, really. So hope that helps. We got another question here from Abiana Roberts. Thank you for the $5 super chat. It says, Tim, I'm getting lost in my channel. What can I do better? And it's a little bit outside the scope of this one. I looked back at last week's episode, and that's where Benji and I talk a lot about how you can just grow your channel and reach more people and promote it outside of YouTube as well. So if that's a topic that you guys are interested in, go check out my conversation with Benji from last week. And we have a few sponsors asking questions. Thank you, those of you who are sponsoring this channel. Whether you're listening to the podcast or you're here on the live stream, there's a blue button on my channel that says sponsor, and that's for $4.99 a month. You get to support this channel, make it possible for people like Benji and I to hang out with you guys, and you get access to like different perks and things, behind the scenes access to a lot of different trainings that I don't post on my channel, and access to a lot of cool content, and even a call-in show where you get to call in on a telephone and talk with me live, which is always a lot of fun too. So, but check that out. I'll be adding some more things to it soon as well. The Creator Fundamentals is a sponsor. Thank you, Dan. And says, what do you think about the thought of Instagram extending their video length? Any plans to expand your brand to long form Instagram videos?
I think that if it's good enough, yes. I remember once I was just sitting there on Twitter. And again, I know this sounds weird talking about Twitter, you're asking about Instagram, but literally I sat and watched like 3 to 5 minutes of video. 3 of those minutes were one video, right? So I think that if it's good enough, and this happened on Facebook, if it's good enough and compelling enough, people will want to watch it. You don't want to upload, I don't think they're going this direction, but you don't want to upload like a long vlog, or even like, I don't know, how many seconds is it now, Tim, that you can upload to Instagram?
I don't know. Last I saw it was 60.
60 seconds, right? So like, even if
I think it's longer than that.
It's better to upload the best 15 to 20 second video than an okay 60 second. And that's the point. But nothing wrong with it. This is the thing that's powerful about video. That, again, it just adds to the value of YouTube. Video keeps people's attention longer than anything, right? I'd say the only thing that would keep somebody's attention longer is like like an article that's really good that you have to read through, right? But again, like, to get their attention, it's got to be like the perfect title. And you're competing against tons of articles out there. But generally speaking, like, an okay video will do better than like a great article, just because people are so used to watching videos, like, so passive now. And sometimes I'm watching YouTube videos. I'm not even watching the video. I just want the audio content. That's why I don't discount the audio of your thing. One thing that I've learned from Tim, because these are podcasts, is I'm trying to like actually define what I'm talking about and not just use my body movement to showcase it. Because again, people are listening, and that's why always level up your audio if you can. So to answer your question real quick though, is yes, I would upload content onto Instagram if they give you the ability to do longer videos. But make sure it's worth going on there, because what you don't want is something that's kind of boring, that doesn't work. And the algorithm figures, okay, when this guy uploads a video, it's not really that significant. So we might not give him as much credibility the next time he posts something. What do you think about that, Tim? Because that's kind of speculation.
Yeah,
but
different platforms go different ways with that. But on YouTube, they're pretty clear that each video is treated individually, and the previous video that you upload does not in any way impact how we promote the next video. However, if your previous video was pretty super lame and you unintentionally trained your audience that they don't care as much about watching your next video, that plays a bigger role. Yep. So, and then I've also learned that like this didn't used to be a big deal, but I've published at some odd times in the evening, and by evening I mean like after midnight, and my notifications, like my traffic sources, was like almost minimal. So like it was like nothing, and I'm like, oh, that video just did not get a good push. I uploaded it, published at like 1 a.m. and everyone's got their phones and do not disturb, so like that did not do very well. But from an algorithm perspective, they say it's not an algorithm thing. It would be what your viewers think about your content type of thing.
That's what they say, but you never know, right? Yeah. But that's why basic principles, like what Tim said,
liars.
The training of your audience will be way bigger than any algorithm, right? Don't get me wrong. Once in a while, you stumble on the right algorithm, technique, or strategy, or even trick. But at the end of the day, you want to play the long game. And the long game is about delivering value to the people that watch you. And that is the case on every platform.
Yep. Another sponsor, Jacob Wera. Thank you for being a sponsor. I really appreciate it. Any clue whether YouTube Stories / Reels will be available for all creators in the future? And the reason I like this question is because it seems like all these platforms are just copying each other. You know, Facebook added Stories. And then Instagram. Well, Instagram added Stories first, which was a rip off of Snapchat, and then Facebook did. And so now YouTube has YouTube Reels / Stories, which I've been using for a while, which I love. I don't use as much as I wish I would, but I don't have any information about when or how that will roll out, or who it'll roll out to, or at what point. So right now it's still in closed beta. And the way you guys access that, if you're not familiar, only on the on the app, YouTube app on your mobile device, you tap on the subscriptions tab, and then at the top it'll have a row of like people who are like most recently uploaded to their channel. The ones that have like a full circle, or it used to be square, now I think it's a circle around them, that indicates that they have a reel that you can watch, or like a YouTube story is what they call it now, that you can just watch. It's basically like Snapchat on YouTube and keep up. And they can be self-expiring. They don't have to be, but there's some cool things you can do with that. But that's where you find that. And I like it because it really lets you quickly and easily engage with your audience, like in between uploads and things. So I wish there was a way I could limit those to only sponsors, because I have some stuff I would love to do that with, but that's a feature.
I think this is a great question, but it has to do with more, not just specifically YouTube Stories, to any new tool or function a platform offers. Number one thing I'd say is this. The reason they offer something new, whether it's Stories or anything like video for Facebook years ago, because they want more attention. They want to keep you in the platform as long as possible. So it's always worth using. Look at these new tools or updates, kind of like a new app, right? We're talking about like Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this a lot, right? Probably one of the hardest working influencers I know. He uses every app just for a little bit, right? If not long term, just puts a little thing. Because again, he's trying to test if this thing's going to go, if it's going to launch. You want your name. You want to make sure you're an early adopter. It's the same thing with these functions. A great story is how we grew on Facebook. Early on, when they offered video, we put up little mini clips of our vlogs, and they just took off. 5 years later, video isn't as significant for us anymore. But back then, we could have 10 viral videos in a year versus one on YouTube, right? Because just that function was not only being prioritized. That's another thing too. YouTube included. I would love to hear your opinion on this, Tim. But YouTube and other platforms, when they put out something new, especially if it's video-centric like Stories, they kind of like prioritize that or do things to kind of enhance it so that it pulls your attention. Right now, one of the biggest hacks, and I mentioned this, Instagram Stories. you get that top bar. So if you uploaded something recently, you could potentially have a space there at the top of your Instagram feed. That is so valuable. And I think, by the way, I don't even have that function yet. I need to figure out how to do that. But I will definitely test out that YouTube stories.
Well, I have more than 10,000 followers on Instagram. And so if you link it to a business page, you can do like the swipe up type of stuff to watch it. But I'm like, but I use this for personal use mostly. So I still have it linked to my personal profile just so it's easier to share pictures straight there and on the post it twice. So Facebook or Instagram and Facebook for me are purely personal. Like if you want to see me and my kids and stuff like that, that's what that's for. But I should be using, there's like all these things that you should be doing. You're like, just when am I going to find the time to do that too? So yes, I'm like, well, one of these days I'm going to be an old fogey and like, I wish I would have invested more in Instagram, but I invested more into my family instead. Aww. There's my cop out. All right. So let's do two more here. Alejandro Perez, thank you also for being a sponsor. What about promoting on Facebook groups rather than on your Facebook page? If you have a Facebook group and people are a part of it because with the expectation of wanting to get content from you or engaging in a community and they kind of all know who you are, I think, yes, absolutely. That can work great. I would still upload directly to the Facebook group though. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And then the Bible Flock box. Thank you for your super chat. Really enjoy your videos, you and video creators. They help me improve my channel. I have over 200,000 subs now. Thanks, and you're welcome. I'm glad you've been growing your channel and reaching a lot of people and changing their lives. So thank you for letting us be a part of it. And for those of you guys who are kind of coming in halfway through the stream here, you can find links to Benji's stuff down in the show notes, down the description of this live stream down below. To his channel, he has a channel called Video Influencers where he trains you guys how to grow on YouTube and how to reach people and change their lives just like we do here. So you definitely want to check that out. And if you're listening to the podcast recording, you can find links to his stuff down in the show notes as well. And of course, you told us Benji Man TV on Instagram, right?
Benji Man on most socials, Benji Man TV.
There you go. Cool. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us and being a part of this. We got another episode coming for you next week. If you're on the live stream, you haven't subscribed already, click that subscribe button, hit the bell so that you do get notified when we live stream next week as well. And if you're listening to the podcast, we'd love to have you join us. We live stream on Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern time, or you can just wait for the recording to come to you on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify. Just search for Video Creators and you'll find us. So thank you guys for hanging out, and we'll see you guys again next week. Bye.